Welcome back to the Adam Schefter Podcast. Training camps are now underway. Not only are training camps underway, but there will be, this week, the first preseason football game of 2025, followed by the Pro Football Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremony, which we will get to on this podcast. But first, we are joined today by my friend, by the co-host of the Pat McAfee Show, Ty Schmit, the weekly host of the Weekly Six Pack.
Thank you very much, Shefty. Good to see you as always. Hey, listen, we said it last week. It felt like the NFL is back. 1 week later, man, we're getting all these training camp videos. Every fan base sees one catch from a player, one pass rush set, or whatever it may be, and hey, we're winning the Super Bowl this year. It just, everything seems like it's full steam ahead. We have this heat wave going. It feels like football's back. It's incredible. I'm feeling great.
By the way, you mentioned like all the coverage all across the country, everybody paying attention to every play. Is there not a more symbolic incident in play than last week when Justin Fields goes down and there is hysteria across New York City? Mike Greenberg on Get Up is melting down, having heart palpitations. They may have to carry him off the set. And lo and behold, the guy dislocated his toe. Now, I think Jets fans were so cursed and so frustrated by so many bad incidents and so many years of losing that they just automatically assumed the worst with Justin Fields. But alas, the Jets and their fans got a break. And it wasn't as bad as they thought, and Justin Fields already is back at practice. But that one little incident, Ty, I think that tells you how much attention and focus is on training camp, how things travel just like that. Justin Fields goes down, carted off. Literally, within moments, every football fan has that information. And it's just the world we're living in. Training camp operates today much different than how it was when I started covering the NFL in 1990. But that's the league today. Everything is a big deal. And it just feels that way right now. That everything that unfolds, whether it's an injury or a trade or a contract extension or a holdout or whatever it may be, that's the biggest deal.
Yeah, without a doubt. We had Peter Schrager on Pat's show yesterday, and he said that the NFL Network's highest ratings for the entire season are not in, November, December, or February when the Super Bowl rolls around. It's in August because everyone is optimistic about their team. They want to know what's going on with their team. And then obviously, we get the injuries and that kind of stuff, and things kind of change for some fan bases. But right now, everyone is as excited as they will be all year for the NFL season.
Right. And so every team is in it. Every team has hope. Every team has optimism until they don't. And once a team starts losing and reality sets in and they're eliminated from the playoffs, then some of those fans, their interest dies down. And also, we're also at the height of fantasy football season where everybody's getting ready to draft in August or September. And everybody's trying to pick up little nuggets of information about who to draft. So it feels like you have all football fans locked in on the National Football League. You've got fantasy football fans. And so I can understand why the level of interest in the summer is as strong as ever. Not to mention the fact that we've just been without the sport since essentially February. And it's sort of like if you don't have ice cream for 6 months, then you try it. Like, boy, you're going to eat the whole gallon of ice cream before you put that thing away.
Yeah, exactly. And, one of the ways that you can lose that hope and optimism pretty quick is if one of the guys who you're expecting to have a massive impact for your team either has a contract dispute or gets hurt or whatever the case may be. So with that in mind, Shefty, let's move into topic number 1 of this week's Six Pack. We got a lot of clarity on a lot of things, but we still have some pretty big unresolved situations with some superstar players in the NFL. As of right now, what can you tell us about Micah Parsons? Where are we at with his deal and that whole situation?
I would say right now we're nowhere on that deal. I would say right now, Ty, we are further away from a deal in late July, early August than we were in late March, early April. The two sides have gone backwards, not forwards. I don't think they're speaking very much these days, if at all. There was communication in late March and early April when Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons were sitting down and discussing a deal and making progress and tracking towards getting that deal done. But this negotiation, when it was a negotiation, has gone sideways because it's not a negotiation right now. There's really no conversation about getting a deal done. That could change next week. It could change shortly before the season. We've seen how long Dallas sometimes waits on some of these deals. See CD Lamb and Dak Prescott last season. This sounds different to me. This sounds a little bit more personal from both sides. It sounds like Dallas is upset with the fact that it felt like it was getting closer to a deal, and then that deal went sideways. And I think Micah Parsons feels like this deal should have been done, and we hear Dallas making all these comments. You heard Jerry come out the first day of camp, say the things that he did, talk about guys getting hurt, and it's not always worth it, and sometimes it's better off to wait. I don't think Micah is real happy with them. I don't think they're real happy with him. I don't think anybody's real happy with anybody. And I don't think there's a deal that's being discussed right now, not to mention being close. So again, it's a negotiation. It always can come together. But for the amount of conversation that there's been about a Micah Parsons deal, we could table that right now because there's nothing going on there right now. And there's no sign of when there will be anything going on there right now. To me, that gets put on the back burner. So in this spot this week, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to put the Micah Parsons contract on the back burner for all the conversation that we've had about it. I mean, maybe it'll come up again because he's Micah Parsons and they're the Dallas Cowboys. But right. I'm just telling you, there's no there right now.
It's obviously a little bit different, but does this kind of feel a little bit similar to the Myles Garrett situation where it's like, hey, they're super far apart. He's unhappy. They feel like they've done right by him. And then obviously money talks. At the time, they make him the highest paid defensive player in NFL history, which is what will happen with Micah if he gets a new contract. Does it kind of feel similar in that sense? Because when he does get paid, he will be happy.
I think it's a great analogy, except there's one major difference. In that particular case with Myles Garrett, Myles kind of was tuning them out, and the Browns were interested in doing whatever it could to salvage it.
Sure.
In this particular case, I think both sides are tuned out. I don't think either one right now is interested in salvaging it today. Now, again, that could change. But where this is going to go is going to be very interesting to track in the weeks and days to come.
Okay, so we'll put a pin in that one and come back to it. Like you said, whether we want to talk about it or not, we're going to hear about it and we're going to talk about it because it's Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys. Let's move on to topic number 2 of this week's Six Pack. A couple more guys who we've been tracking for quite some time. Where are we at currently with both Trey Hendrickson and Terry McLaurin's potential deals?
Ty, I don't mean to be the voice of doom and gloom today, and maybe that is the case in late July and early August, that it's the time to adopt that tone and that attitude, and it always can shift as the calendar moves into August and the regular season gets closer. But just like I'm telling you that Micah and the Dallas Cowboys are nowhere today, I believe the same is basically true of Trey Hendrickson and Terry McLaurin, and we'll take it case by case. Trey Hendrickson is so frustrated by the last 2 years, and we've heard Mike Brown come out and say that Trey Hendrickson's not been easy to deal with. Well, Trey Hendrickson, that particular situation right now is about guaranteed money. We talked about it on your show, Pat McAfee show this week, gave numbers, but really the truth of the matter is it's beyond that because Trey Hendrickson feels like he's willing to give in certain areas. So if he's willing to give in certain areas, there should be more guarantees. The bottom line is the top pass rushers, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, all have had 3 years of guaranteed money. And the Bengals haven't gotten there, haven't gotten close to that with Trey Hendrickson. And Trey Hendrickson is in Florida. He's working out. He's away from Cincinnati. He's tuning out the noise, not happy with the way things are going. But I really believe he will not budge unless the guarantees come closer to what he is expecting. And right now, as we record this on the morning of Tuesday, July 29th, the two sides are not close. They're not close to a deal. Didn't sound to me like anything will happen anytime soon based on my conversations. Again, it could come together, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. So we'll see where that goes. I think it's not going to be difficult to agree to the years of the deal, the average of the deal, but the guaranteed money is a huge sticking point. And until that gets resolved, this deal ain't happening. And Terry McLaurin, also a very complicated situation. And I could spell it out why. Terry McLaurin has been an incredibly productive wide receiver, not to mention a leader and one of the most, if not the most respected voice and player in that locker room for a long period of time. He came out in the same draft class as DK Metcalf. Earlier this offseason, DK Metcalf got traded from Seattle to Pittsburgh, and typically when teams trade for players, they pay a premium, and DK Metcalf got a deal that averaged $33 million a year. Well, Terry McLaurin's numbers are better than DK Metcalf's. And Terry McLaurin is a couple of years older than DK Metcalf, but he's got better numbers, and I think he feels like he can claim, well, that should be the floor for a deal, $33 million. And I think he probably wants even considerably more than that. We also have other deals for wide receivers in the mid-30s, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson, I think, is in a category his own. CeeDee Lamb may be true, but Terry McLaurin believes that his value is so great as a player and as a person that he should be rewarded for that and for all he's done, and I understand why. The Washington Commanders can say, Mike Evans got $24 million a year. Cortland Sutton just did a deal with the Denver Broncos this year for $24 million a year. Now, I don't think the Commanders view Terry as a $24 million a year player, but I don't think they view him as a $34, $35 million a year player. And both sides appear to be dug in here. Now, how that's going to resolve itself, I don't know. But Terry McLaurin obviously knew that this could be a while, and he reported to the team on Saturday with an ankle injury, and he was put on the physically unable to perform list. Now, I know the one thing that would make his ankle feel a lot better, a new deal. Yeah. I guarantee you that if there were a new deal, his ankle would be fine, and I don't know that he'd be on the field right away, but they'd ramp him up, and it wouldn't be an issue for the opening game against the New York Giants. So how's that going to get resolved when Terry is dug in and feels very strongly about his value? And I think the Commanders also feel strong. Like, if this were so easy for a player as great and as respected as it would be done. And it's not. So that one's going on for a little while. And we'll see when that one gives in. Now, again, it's not like difficult negotiations and holdouts and hold-ins are some sort of new phenomena in the National Football. We've always seen this. And every single one of them presents their challenges and always has presented challenges. So this is no different in that way. But these are some of the particulars involved in this year's contract squabbles. And this year's today don't seem close to being resolved. Now, in the end, Ty, I believe they'll probably all get resolved. Probably all of them. Maybe two of them. But the fact of the matter is today, no deal in sight on either end.
Okay. I mean, the Trey Hendrickson one, I get, because we've talked about that ad nauseum, and that's been going on for almost years at this point. So you could see I think he has every right to be kind of difficult to be, in terms of what Mike Brown thinks. It's like, hey, listen, you guys promised 2 years in a row that we'd, assess this contract and kind of make good on it, and they haven't. And he's went out and performed on the field time and time again. The Terry McLaurin ones, for me, it's a little bit tougher to wrap my head around because, like you said, model citizen. I mean, I think this is going to be the first year in his career where he's had the same quarterback 2 years in a row. Like, you have Jaden Daniels. Terry McLaurin is one of the faces of your franchise. And for a franchise that was in turmoil for so long, to never have any issues with him, just know exactly what you're getting year after year. He's dependable. I don't think he's missed a game. Yeah. It just, but again, I also understand, Washington, they got a lot going on right now, not just with his contract situation. So do you want to pay him $35 million a year? Whatever. I mean, it's a tough deal, but you would think, yes, that they would no matter what, want him in their locker room, in their building for these weeks leading up to the season, because I think the expectations for the Commanders this year, I mean, after going to the NFC Championship, do you think is it Super Bowl or bust for them? I mean, is that what they're kind of thinking?
Well, they have a window here, and you want to take advantage of it. But the fact of the matter is, again, they got to get that deal done with the wide receiver, and
Yeah.
I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Okay. So, yeah, another two, marquee guys that we'll have to keep an eye on as we get closer to the start of the season and through training camp. Let's move on to topic number 3 of this week's Six Pack. Shefty, you touched on this a little bit yesterday on Pat's show. As far as you know, what is the deal with the Christian Wilkins situation? This just seems very weird. I guess that's what, someone from Vegas reported, just a weird situation in general. But he's been released, and now the Raiders don't want to pay a big chunk of what he is owed. Where do we stand in that whole situation? And can you kind of fill in the dots a little bit?
Yeah, well, the reason he's not there today, I believe, is largely and primarily due to the condition of his foot. Last year, he suffered a Jones fracture. He had surgery the next day, was ready to come back. And then at some point this offseason, he needed another surgery. The team wanted him to have it right away. There were a couple of surgeries scheduled. He didn't get it done for whatever reason. He didn't feel like he needed it. He didn't want to do it. I don't know. They don't know. But he didn't do the surgeries when the team wanted to have them done. And the team kept saying, if you don't get it done now, you're going to delay the date of your return, and you're now going to miss or put the start of the season in jeopardy. And this just went on for weeks and months, to the point where they got so frustrated that on June 4th, they voided $35.2 million worth of guarantees. Now, that didn't just happen like that, okay? There was a whole process that led up to them voiding those guarantees. And he had 50 days to have a grievance filed on his behalf from the NFLPA. On the very last day, last Thursday, that morning, the NFLPA filed a grievance on behalf of Christian Wilkins. And once they filed the grievance, the Raiders felt like they were ready to move on anyway. There was at least one other incident, and some believe more, involving Christian Wilkins and some of his behavior. And we reported yesterday, we talked about it on your show yesterday on Monday, that at one point in time, now this incident absolutely happened. They were in a team meeting room. Christian Wilkins went over to one of his teammates, put his arm around him, gave him a kiss on the head. Teammate didn't like it, appreciate it. Christian Wilkins thought he was being playful. The teammate felt offended by it. The teammate reported it to HR. HR did an investigation and drew its own conclusions. Now, I still believe that if that incident hadn't occurred, I still believe he would have been released. But it just gives them more reason to go after that bonus money, whatever they have. And Christian Wilkins will have his argument as well. So it is a whole big legal mess that is tied up to the $35.2 million in guaranteed money that starts with the condition of his foot and ends with this incident and maybe other incidents. Now, there also are people who still believe that he needs surgery still, and he hasn't had it. And if and when he gets surgery, he then would be sidelined 12 to 16 weeks. So I know there's also been a lot of conversation about, I want my team to sign Christian Wilkins. I want my team to sign. Well, guess what? Whoever signs Christian Wilkins very well may not have Christian Wilkins available this season until late in the year, if at all. Now, maybe you get Christian Wilkins back next year, but he then would be 31, coming up essentially 2 foot surgeries and 2 seasons of not playing football. So there are, not to mention the other stuff.
Right.
So there are a lot of questions here that need to get answered. There are and have been investigations within the Raiders' offices. The incident that I talked about 100% happened. There might be other things, that's fine. But this incident was at the root of some of the situations that were kind of floating around there on social media, if you will.
Okay, yeah, and with that whole deal, like we will learn more about that, I believe. I think, as time goes on, like that's just kind of the way it works nowadays. Something will pop up on Twitter or there will be, an investigative story that's done, et cetera, et cetera. We will find out more about that situation. But I want to go back to the money because that leads right into topic number 4 of this week's Six Pack. How is what's going on with the NFLPA right now and their kind of void of leadership, I guess, and just that whole, for lack of a better term, show, how is that affecting what is going on with like the NFL players now in a situation like this where if Christian Wilkins wants to get that money that he believes he's owed, he's going to need the NFLPA to help out?
This is the problem right now. I think the NFL, in the opinion of others, feels empowered to kind of have its way in some of these situations. The NFLPA is fighting all sorts of its own battles. As we record this, it doesn't even have an interim executive director. It doesn't have a full-time executive director. It's fending off queries and questions about the behavior of its former executive director, Lloyd Howell, visiting nightclubs and strip clubs and all sorts of events in Miami. So we've got all sorts of unresolved issues regarding players in the National Football League. We're waiting to hear if and when Jordan Addison is going to be suspended for his DUI case. We're waiting to hear about whether or not Rashee Rice is going to be suspended and for his part in a hit and run last off season. We're waiting to hear about this Christian Wilkins. And so there are people out there that have said to me, we just don't feel like the NFLPA is in the type of position it needs to be in to lend a helping hand to these players. Now, they can try, but I can tell you directly from one person involved in one of these situations, they're like, the NFL just feels like it could just walk all over the PA right now because the PA doesn't have an executive director. So when they're trying to figure out discipline in some of these cases and what should and shouldn't happen, I think the NFL right now is at an advantage over the NFLPA, and that could be the case for some period of time with the NFLPA trying to right itself moving forward.
Do you know, is there any kind of timeline for when they're going to select a successor, or is it kind of just like it's in so much array right now and they have so much going on that they're kind of just trying to plug as many holes as they can?
Well, they're going to try to move on this interim director. I would have thought it would have been in place. They wanted to have the interim executive director in place by the time training camps opened last week. That didn't happen. They're now aiming to get an interim director as soon as they can. Maybe it'll be this week. Maybe it'll be next week. I don't know. They want it done as soon as they can. But even then, it's just an interim executive director that gets them to the off season when they then would pick a full-time director. And they want a former player in the interim executive director role, and maybe they'll want a player again in the offseason in the full-time executive director role. But in the history of the NFLPA, there's never been a stretch like this organization has had the last couple of weeks. It feels like my colleagues Don Van Natta and Kalen Kaler have been unearthing something else about those individuals in that group every day now. And it's just amazing the headlines that have come out of it and the work that they've done. Props to them for some great reporting. But it was, I just think that these players right now, some of them feel like they're not getting all the help that they can.
Rightfully so. I think that's pretty evident. Everything that happens, it seems, or everything new that we hear, it seems like it's, coming out of a movie. But that'll be something we'll have to keep our eye on because obviously that's a big deal and that kind of needs to be situated. Let's move on to topic number 5 of this week's Six Pack, Shefty. As of right now, where we stand, what do you know about the Browns kind of QB positioning, where they're at with their depth chart? It looks like a lot of those guys are kind of getting a decent amount of reps, but again, if you're just basing everything you see off what training camp stats, it's kind of hard to get a full picture of what's actually going on with the Browns QB situation.
Well, Ty, the most interesting positional battle in the National Football League is the Cleveland quarterback room. And I think that it gets a little bit clearer by the day. Now, they haven't played a preseason game yet, and that would go, I would think, a ways towards determining the starter. But Kenny Pickett had a good couple of practices last week, and then he tweaked his hamstring. And they're saying he's day to day. But he could miss a week or two. We'll see what it winds up being. My understanding is he'll test it later this week, but it's a hamstring injury. So now we have a quarterback on a new team, in a new offense with new coaches and new teammates who's going to miss some time. That's not advantageous when you're trying to unseat Joe Flacco. We have the two rookies. But again, when have we seen mid-round quarterback draft picks come out of the gate, storm the castle, and win the starting job from the time that they're with the team? I can remember two instances of a mid-round pick doing that.
Yeah, what, Russell Wilson?
Russell Wilson in 2012 and Dak Prescott with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Both quarterbacks came out and lit it up in preseason games. And when you watched them, you said there's no way this team can go with this guy as the starting quarterback. Now, Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders may play like that when we get to the preseason games. We don't know. Most rookie quarterbacks don't. But they have the opportunity to do it. We'll see if they can. But the chances are, if we just look at how this has gone every summer, they may play well, but they're not going to play gangbusters like Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott. Those guys were different in their rookie campaigns. And so hopefully both will play well. Hopefully they'll be the quarterbacks the Browns thought, but it's hard to imagine. I'm not expecting them to come out and light it up in that way. So if they don't, then it's going to be a veteran quarterback starting. We've always thought it would be a veteran starting for the Browns on opening day. And so if Pickett's sidelined and Flacco is getting more reps, and Flacco already has been in that offense and knows the coaches and has won the comeback player of the year there, and if you look at the Browns' early season schedule, it's brutal. It's not conducive to a rookie starting a quarterback. It's conducive to a veteran that you can lean on and trust to try to win early. So we'll see how it plays out. There's a lot of time. But going in, it's hard not to handicap Joe Flacco as the favorite to win that job right now. And let's see what happens.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that was the plan all along. You look at his familiarity with Stefanski and that offense. Obviously, he led them on that playoff run. Like you said, I mean, with that kind of murderer's row they have early, you don't want to throw Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders out there and just, hey, good luck, kid. Let's see what you can do. That's not exactly the best way to build confidence in a young quarterback early in their first season. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think as of right now, it's tough to imagine that anyone but Joe Flacco will be starting week one for the Browns.
I just want to give you this early season schedule for the Cleveland Browns. Okay. Does this sound like, I mean, week one at home against Cincinnati, favorable matchup for the quarterback. Favorable. Okay. Mm-hmm. Next week at Baltimore. Next week, home for Green Bay. Next week at Detroit. Next week, home for the Vikings. Next week at Pittsburgh. Like, good luck to a rookie in those matchups. So it almost has to be a veteran early on unless one of these rookies goes lights out in the preseason. And right now, Pickett's dealing with a hamstring injury, so advantage Joe Flacco.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, and based on that, I mean, you can't, unless it's a first overall pick, and nothing against Shedeur or Dylan Gabriel, but unless you know that's going to be your guy the whole year and that's the plan, hey, we're going to let him get his bumps and bruises and we need him to get reps, that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to kind of throw a guy to the wolves like that. All right, so we'll keep an eye on that. I'm sure we will we'll hear quite a bit more about the Browns QB, carousel or whatever you want to call it. Like I said, every day there is a radio station in Cleveland who is tweeting out the full stats from that day of camp. So people are pretty invested in it. But I don't think we're going to get any clarity on that within the next few weeks. All right, let's move on to the sixth and final topic of this week's Six Pack Schefty. This Thursday night, you mentioned it at the top of the show, we have the first preseason game, the Hall of Fame game. We're going to be there. We're doing the show from there.
You're going, huh?
Yeah, yep. First time I'm going to be there, so I'm pretty
Never been there
excited
before?
No, never been. So I'm pretty excited to get down there. What do you think about the game Thursday night and then the Hall of Fame ceremonies this weekend as well?
Well, it's a game, right? Now, again, we're going to put it on. You're not going to see any of the starters.
No.
They're not going to play anybody. You're going to get, I don't even think you'll get the Chargers' first-round draft pick, Omarion Hampton, in that game. I think this is a game for the third and fourth stringers. It's a little bit like a high school scrimmage. But you know what? That's fine. It'll be on TV. There'll be players and helmets and uniforms and game action. And it's the kind of thing where everyone's like, I can't wait to watch. They put it on, and then about 5 minutes and everyone's like, when does the regular season begin?
Yeah.
That's what happens, okay? And there'll be a lot of players on the Chargers and Lions that you've never heard of, but it is the start of preseason football. And that's kind of fun. And that just tells us we're getting closer to the season. And I'll be watching the whole thing Thursday night to see if any of these young players make a mark and jump out. And then, of course, you have the enshrinement ceremony later in the weekend. Eric Allen, Jared Allen, Antonio Gates, Shannon Sharp, or Sterling Sharp. Sterling Sharp and Shannon Sharp become the first brothers elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which is kind of cool. There have been 3 father-son tandems that are enshrined: Tim Mara and Wellington Mara, Art Rooney Sr. and Dan Rooney, Ed Sable and Steve Sable, all legends. It'll be an emotional weekend for the Sharp family. Eric Allen, been waiting a long time. Jared Allen, Antonio Gates. These guys have waited, and they certainly deserve it, and it's going to be awesome to watch. And I always love the speeches. You know, I once wrote a book on these guys' speeches because it is almost the penultimate moment of their careers when it all comes together and they get to show gratitude and appreciation and perspective and insights onto what brought them to that moment and made them a Pro Football Hall of Famer. I collected speeches and highlighted the most interesting, introspective passages that every Hall of Famer ever delivered in their speech. And obviously that process has evolved over the years to where the Hall of Fame has shortened speeches and put limits on it because some guys were out of control, like Steve Young's dad, Britt Young, spoke for 2 hours, and everybody in the audience is half asleep, and it was comical. But they've changed the rules there, but it's still an unbelievable moment when these guys get to step on stage and essentially pay thanks to all the people that helped get them there and all the lessons that they learned along the way. So always a fun thing. Football Thursday night, speeches later in the weekend. That to me is always the first tip-off that the season is upon us. But it already feels like the season is upon us, Ty. It is just crazy, all the things that are happening. We want to express our condolences and sympathy to all the people involved in the shooting at the league headquarters on Monday. That was incredible. I'm at dinner Monday night. I get a text from somebody who's in New York City, right by the office. Hey, are you aware of the shooting that just occurred at the NFL offices? Terrible situation. A New York City police officer who has 2 children and whose wife is pregnant with a 3rd child lost his life. And that is tragic and beyond unspeakably sad. We had a league employee who was shot in the back and is in critical condition in the hospital. People lost their lives, and just hate to see that. But again, from a football standpoint, it just feels like every day there are more highlights like you talked about at the beginning of the podcast, more developments, injuries, contract extensions, and now we have a game Thursday followed by the Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremony. And you know what, Ty? It's all here.
Yeah, I know.
Here we go again, right?
Yep. Yeah. No, I can't wait. Like you said, the first thing I see every morning when I wake up my phone, I have to go check, and it's like, oh, wow, that was a nice pass from this guy. Maybe he's going to have a big year. So all the grinds are already turning, or the gears are already turning, and it is, like you said, hey, we're going to be grinding now for the season has started. There's no, we got September, the first week of September. It's like the season is here. So let's go.
By the way, you see the highlight of Christian McCaffrey?
Oh, my God.
The catch he made?
Unbelievable.
Oh.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that was incredible. I actually have to put that up on my Twitter timeline and Instagram. I'll do that right when we get done taping this. But that was an incredible catch where he caught it at his shoelaces, basically. And he certainly looks like he's ready for a season. We're all ready for the football, and we look forward to getting back. All right, Ty, great job today. Appreciate you making the time, as usual. Many thanks to the rest of our team, Dan Stanzik, Ben Smith, and you, the listener, for tuning in to another Adam Schefter podcast. We'll be back in this spot next week with the games having begun. Until then, have a great week, be well, and stay safe.